A woman inherits her father's store and, to evaluate the staff, works incognito as a janitor. However, the manager accuses her of theft. It was a cold autumn and a light drizzle saddened the city. A young woman about 20 years old enters a renowned jewelry store. Her simple attire, worn boots, old coat over a gray sweater, and a childlike hat with a large pom-pom betrayed her modest origin. Despite her clothes, Clara maintained a natural charm, with her blonde hair, vibrant blue eyes, and freckles on her rosy cheeks. Clara had a striking beauty, with sharp facial features, a model stature, and a slightly pointed nose, attracting male gazes. Determined to get a job at the jewelry store, it was no surprise she came from a small town and was desperate for work. Thus, she entered the first store she saw and asked for a vacancy. The manager, Eduardo, a robust man in a formal black suit, looked at her with disdain and asked a few questions. "How old are you? Where are you from? Do you have experience?" Despite Eduardo's youth, his appearance, gold rings, and a large watch suggested origins in a dubious business family. Clara didn't like him right away, but she needed the job. Pleased with the answers, the perpetually dissatisfied manager spun his new employee register book before instructing his assistant to hire Clara as a janitor, although there was a vacancy for a salesperson. Eduardo, as a shrewd businessman, thought that an ordinary and unkempt young woman like her would scare off customers instead of selling jewelry. This assumption proved correct, as the jewelry store was part of a chain where customers expected not only to buy silver, gold, and precious stones, but also first-class service. After giving the necessary instructions, Eduardo pointed to the door of his luxuriously furnished office with expensive wood and began examining documents. Clara then interacted with Sophia, the manager's assistant, who was much friendlier. The woman, slightly chubby and dressed in bright and strange clothes to match her makeup, warmly welcomed Clara. When they were alone in the hallway, Sophia even offered a cup of tea. Although she was in her 40s, she treated Clara as an equal. "Where did you say you came from again?" asked Sophia, filling in the employment register. "I didn't quite understand." "I come from far away, ma'am," replied Clara. "Just call me Sophia," said the assistant, looking disapprovingly over her glasses. "We're going to work together and you call me ma'am? I'm just an ordinary woman too, and I also came from far away." "All right," agreed Clara, settling comfortably in the chair after the cold walk outside. "Just don't get sick, okay?" Sophia looked at the young woman with concern. Eduardo really hated when employees got sick, had children, or took any kind of leave. At the jewelry store, it was simple. Either you accepted these conditions or you would be fired. But the pay was good and always on time. Good pay even for a janitor? Yes, even for a janitor. And the best part is that you won't have any extra tasks. You just need to clean your designated area and then you can go home. By the way, do you live far from the store? I live nearby. Just 2 streets away, said Clara, taking a sip of the bitter tea and grimacing. Oh, don't lie to me. The areas around the store are elite neighborhoods. No newcomer to the big city can afford to rent there. I said that because I don't know the city well. I live on the outskirts, Clara clarified, putting the unpleasant tea aside. Eduardo has been in this business for a long time. I like people who ask direct questions, said Sophia, proving to be honest. Eduardo only manages the store and 2 others nearby. We have a main boss, Daniel. He is the owner of this jewelry business that has branches in several major cities, but I heard he is seriously ill now. It's a question of who will take over the business. Is there any candidate for his position? There is a candidate, corrected Sophia. He has a daughter, but she has lived abroad for a long time. It is more likely that the business will legally pass to her. However, Eduardo has the best chance of becoming the chief manager of the entire chain of jewelry stores. The daughter may just receive a share of the profits, or maybe not. With rich people, you never know. I understand. Well, now you need to ask the other janitors to show you where the cleaning supplies warehouse is, and tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock you need to be at work on time. You will have to clean the entire store before it opens for customers, said Sophia confidently. Clara had been working at the jewelry store for a few weeks, diligently performing her duties and scrubbing the white tile floors daily, knowing that the next customer would leave dirty footprints, making her effort seem futile. Some customers cleaned their feet on the entrance mat while others walked in without doing so, as if deliberately trying to leave as much autumn mud on the tiles as possible. The person Clara least liked was the store owner's fiancée, Norma. She was a tall and hysterical young woman, known for winning first place in a local beauty contest. Because of this, she insisted on being called Norma and demanded to be treated as a manager. The team called her second boss. Norma never cleaned her shoes on the mat and seemed to deliberately find mud outside to create more work for the technical employees, as she called the cleaning workers. As Sophia had mentioned during Clara's hiring, everyone in the store complied with the director's conditions. Salespeople and security guards tried to please Norma in the hope that she would ask her fiancé to do them a favor. Despite her wealth, Norma dressed very tastelessly, unable to compose an elegant look. However, the striking blonde constantly changed her rings and necklaces, apparently to flaunt her wealth to the staff. Clara met Norma for the first time in the hallway while cleaning. "Are you the new janitor?" asked Norma, wrinkling her nose, clearly feeling superior and acting as if she owned the place. "Yes, that's me," said Clara quietly. "Good morning, Norma. Nice to meet you. Let's stop talking about getting to know each other for now. But it's good that you treat me with respect. That's the right thing to do. Are you here for a long time or just for a while?" "I'm here for a long time," whispered Clara, feeling either blushing or pale take over her face. "I really like working here. Of course, everyone loves working for such a high salary and such an elegant place." "Oh, I see you, Norma, have already met our new employee, Clara," said Eduardo, the director, as he came down the stairs leading to the second floor. "Don't be too hard on her. She's really doing her best here." "I know all about these working girls," said Norma with displeasure. "She probably already has a child and maybe even is divorced." "No, I don't have children or a husband." "It's better not to play with this girl," said Eduardo, trying to be a polite gentleman as he put his arm around his fiancée's waist. "Do you know her last name?" "What is it?" "It's the same as our boss, Rio Eduardo." "I think it's just a coincidence." "But he died," said Norma. "Don't talk about that," whispered Eduardo, tightening his grip on her waist. "There's no need to tell everyone that." That day, Clara felt a lot of stress meeting Norma. Throughout her shift, she went out several times and felt sick at night. That night, she developed a high fever and chills. In her state, she didn't realize when she turned off the alarm in the morning, causing her to be late for work for the first time. However, sneaking unnoticed into her small warehouse was not possible. Something unpleasant had happened in the jewelry store. The entire team was gathered in the main hall, and in the center of the small crowd, taking advantage of the early absence of customers, was Norma, speaking loudly. "I believe that none of you could have taken the money from the cash register, but our new janitor has not yet been checked by me, and from her appearance, someone had a good night with money that was not theirs last night." "Why are you saying this?" "Oh my God," whispered Clara. "I just got sick, didn't hear the alarm. I apologize, but only for being late." "All right, let's resolve this," said the store's second boss sternly. Eduardo was nearby, sadly leaning on the counter. "Reviewing the video recordings will help clarify things, and if you did this, you will be punished," continued Norma. "No, I didn't do anything," replied Clara confidently. "Regardless, you were late today, which means you automatically lose 20% of your salary. Therefore, be kind enough to clean the entire store floor within the next half hour. For now, I will accompany you to your work warehouse," said Norma with a malicious smile. Norma then accompanied the employee to the warehouse. "Do you want to tell me something in particular?" asked Clara after Norma closed the door behind them. "Listen, I'm sure you stole the cash register money. You calculated perfectly that one of the cash registers is not visible on the cameras, and when the salesperson was distracted by a customer, you took part of the cash register money." "How much money is missing?" asked Clara, tired, feeling ill. 100 Brazilian reals. "I can return the money, but I didn't take it. "Yes, I'll return the money," shouted Norma disdainfully and left the room. The day seemed to drag on forever. Clara wanted to stop being a janitor and reveal the truth, but she needed to hold on a little longer. At night, after closing the door of the jewelry store behind her, Clara walked tiredly through a few streets and entered the courtyard of a luxury residential complex, looking at a luxury SUV parked there. Clara removed the uncomfortable wig and wiped part of the makeup off her face with a moistened wipe. "It's all right," she said, looking at herself in the car's rearview mirror. "Dad would understand why I'm doing this." Clara was the daughter of the late Daniel, the owner of the chain of jewelry stores. For many years, she lived abroad, trying to build her life independently without her controlling father's help. But now, with her father's death, she deeply regretted not having spent his last years by his side. After her mother died during childbirth, Daniel, left alone with young Clara, did everything to ensure that his daughter never felt deprived of anything. He didn't give her much money, but he made an effort to leave work early to spend more time with his beloved Clara. Only when she grew up did Clara realize how much her father had sacrificed his personal life to always be by her side. Daniel spent all his time with Clara and thus became completely out of touch with interacting with women. When his daughter went to study abroad, he was left alone and quickly became a sick and melancholic man, missing his daughter. Sitting in the car, Clara recalled a phone conversation with her father. "But Dad, I can't come to you. I have so many things to do here." "I understand, Clara, but I would really like to see you." "It's impossible," the daughter replied firmly. "Nothing is impossible. Your mother gave birth to your sister when the power went out in the hospital." "Dad, don't bring that up again." "All right, I won't." Thinking of her father, Clara absent-mindedly traced the small birthmark on her clavicle. Daniel had the same mark and used to joke that it was how he felt connected to his daughter, even from afar. Currently, Clara's lawyers had assured her that she could take over her father's business, but she needed to choose a manager who could help her with the administration. Through a friend of her father, she learned that one of the best managers in the city at the moment was Eduardo, son of Daniel, and that he would be the best choice as her deputy. However, Clara always preferred to check things out personally. So, she decided to find out about Eduardo personally. After working for a few weeks as a janitor in her own store, she was shocked by the internal rules and the store's environment. Marcelo, her father's friend, knew what she looked like. Therefore, Clara had to go through extensive preparations, including changing her appearance and artificially altering her voice with the help of a theater friend, to ensure that she was not recognized in case Eduardo's father decided to visit him at work. Of course, she could have hired private detectives to learn everything about the manager, but Clara was determined, honest, and a bit romantic, so she decided to handle the matter personally. Dad, you told me to get involved in the family business as soon as possible. You must have felt that you were getting worse, Clara thought. And I kept thinking only about myself in other cities and dreaming of a different life. And what was the point of all this? Now I'm here, and you're no longer alive. I miss you so much. Clara struggled to hold back tears as she thought of her father. In the cold car with the engine off, she felt her loneliness acutely. All right. No more crying. Control, Clara said to herself, her expression hardening. I need to think like my father would think. What do I have now? A big business that has already started losing profits since my father's death. Eduardo and the entire jewelry store team are stealing cash without problems. And then Norma, the incredibly arrogant girl who acts like she owns the store. With these thoughts, Clara got out of the car and politely greeted the doorman who courteously opened the doors for the heiress of the vast business empire. The elderly man said nothing out loud, but he noticed once again that the young rich woman was dressed even worse and more strangely today than the day before. Despite her ability to buy any clothes, once at home, the owner of the luxurious property turned on the large television screen that displayed images from the cameras in all the stores and found the footage from her store. She slowly reviewed the morning footage. The cash register from which the money had been stolen was visible in the corner of the footage. The surveillance camera really only showed that the cashier had forgotten to close the drawer, but the money drawer was not visible. Feeling embarrassed, Clara decided to see what the store manager was doing at that moment. To her surprise, she discovered that even before the store opened, Eduardo's father had visited him. Unfortunately, the conversation made it difficult to understand what they were discussing. So, Clara decided it was time to rest. Who should I appoint as my main deputy? She wondered, relaxing in the bathtub. Eduardo, despite being a bit rude and brusque, is indeed a good manager in this area. Of course, he has his faults, like occasionally having his employees stealing part of the profits and his fiancée treating everyone terribly, but he managed to keep the business running until I officially took over. Maybe I should appoint him as my deputy. After these reflections, she almost fell asleep in the bathtub. Exhausted, struggling to go to bed, falling into a deep sleep until morning. In the morning, she felt much better. With a cup of coffee, she reviewed the video recordings again, this time paying attention not only to the footage inside the store, but also to the external surveillance. "Ah, he's back," said the young owner, taking a sip of her prepared coffee. The recording showed a young man with dark hair, looking like a homeless person, who appeared near the entrance of the store holding the hand of a girl. He seemed to be about 30 years old, while the girl appeared to be about 6 or 7 years old. The stranger greeted the janitor and, taking a broom from him, quickly cleaned the area around the store. It seemed clear that this was not the first time this had happened. After finishing the job, the man received a few cents from the janitor and seemed ready to stay near the entrance of the store, but then in the footage, Eduardo appeared and gestured for the man and the girl to leave. "It looks like he's already working," sighed Clara as she began to dress in the janitor's uniform she had been wearing lately. "I need to go to work or he'll yell at me again for being late." But she couldn't make it in time. Despite Eduardo having recently sent the man away, he had already returned to the jewelry store. But this time without the girl, the young man had placed a cap on the ground in front of him, leaned back against the wall, watching the people passing by indifferently. The man was too handsome to be a homeless person. His black hair was cut short and his large brown eyes stood out on his face. A bit of stubble on his cheeks added a rugged touch to his appearance, but his thin face with oriental features showed both intelligence and acceptance of his difficult fate. Clara immediately noticed that he was wearing a dark and expensive coat that was completely worn out. "At the time they met, you are a very handsome young man, and you are here asking people for money," said Clara, unable to contain her comment. "You could be working as a janitor." "Yes, I could," replied the stranger, looking at Clara with his expressive eyes. "But without documents, no one will hire me." "And I also have this," said the man, opening his coat and revealing an old plastic and metal corset that squeezed his body. "What is that for?" asked Clara more calmly. "What do you mean, what is that for?" smiled the man. "You should ask your manager about it." "What do you mean by that?" "Forget what I said. Go to work." Life is hard for everyone, so there's no point in explaining the complexities of fate to everyone. Clara understood why the man had answered so abruptly. He didn't want to tell his life story again, but due to his professional skills and sharp mind, she quickly processed the information and realized that the homeless man could help her with her questions. Therefore, after work, she went out in her car to find him and soon stopped near where he was at that moment. The man was helping to unload boxes from a small van at a supermarket not far from where they first met. "Sir," called Clara, lowering the window of the SUV. "Can you help me? I'll pay you." "What?" asked the man with a sad look, struggling to place a not too heavy box on the ground and straightening his back slowly. It was evident from each movement that he was in pain. He probably even had back problems. Despite this, Clara couldn't take her eyes off the stranger. He exhaled heavily, and the cold air began to form mist in front of his face. At that moment, Clara thought about the fragility of human life. "You can help me for money." "I was recommended to you," said Clara confidently. "They told me there is a Marcos in our neighborhood." "I'm not Marcos," replied the man, shaking his head. "So, what's your name?" "My name is Gabriel." "Right, I must have confused the name my acquaintances mentioned," continued Clara. Lying. They said you can do any job. I do what I have the strength to do. And lately, I haven't had much strength, said Gabriel, not looking at the woman in the SUV, and opened his coat again to show the corset. It's not a difficult job, is it, ma'am? Said the cashier at the supermarket who was counting the unloaded boxes. Gabriel is just going through a tough time, but he's a very decent person. Don't worry, he won't cheat you. Thank you for the recommendation, smiled Clara and said to the man in front. Get in the car. Can I get in like this? Asked Gabriel, unsure about his appearance. I'll have the interior of the car cleaned if necessary. Go ahead, Gabriel, the cashier at the supermarket, called. There are only 3 light boxes left. I can take care of them alone. Gabriel carefully got into the car and looked around. Do you live on the street? Asked Clara immediately, by precaution, feeling the pepper spray in her pocket. You need to. Trust people, but you need to check them first, she thought. No, I have a small apartment, but it's unfurnished and needs repairs. In this neighborhood? Asked Clara, surprised, as she pulled out of the park. But real estate here is very expensive. Exactly, nodded Gabriel. You may not believe me, but there was a time when I owned several apartments in this neighborhood. This apartment was a reserve property for me. Is that true? Asked Clara, looking at the stranger differently now. Yes, it's true, nodded the man. What do I need to do? What job are you offering? You need to tell me the truth, said Clara, stopping in a nearby yard. What did you mean this morning when you pointed to your corset and said I should ask my manager about what happened to you? It was you, but you look completely different now. Yes, I'm not as simple as you thought. Consider me a private investigator who got a job at the jewelry store to find out what kind of manager Eduardo is. Do you know him? The man began to get nervous, and Clara couldn't help but notice. Is something wrong? She asked. My daughter will be in danger if Eduardo finds out that I said something about him. Really? Yes, it is, replied Gabriel, sadly. All right. What if I assure you that I can provide you and your daughter with the necessary protection and take you to a place where no one can find you? Eduardo may not find us, but his father already found me once. Look what happened, said Gabriel, tapping his chest, which emitted a muffled sound from the corset he was wearing. What if I tell you that I have connections more influential than Eduardo's father? That's impossible, shook Gabriel's head. A private detective can't have connections more influential than a former police commissioner. Maybe, continued Clara, but I'm not exactly a private detective. All right, conceded the man. Let's do this. I'll tell you everything about my dealings with Eduardo, and you take my daughter, Vittoria, and take her out of this country. As far away as possible. Only under that condition am I willing to tell everything. Agreed, then. This will be a quite long story, began Gabriel, telling everything. And Clara realized how long the man had been seeking revenge and waiting for the right moment to share everything that had happened to him. It all started a few years ago, when my chain of antique stores was losing revenue and approaching bankruptcy. At that time, a well-known figure, a former police commissioner named Ricardo, offered his son as a crisis manager. I was quite wealthy at the time and married to a woman who was focused on building her modeling career. Her name was Norma. You may have seen her at the jewelry store. She is there more often than at home. Unlike her, I really wanted to be a father, but my wife said that would only be possible in a few years when she achieved success in modeling, something she had been pursuing for years. As a compromise, I accepted Ricardo's offer because he seemed experienced and had many influential connections. Additionally, my father had known Ricardo for a long time, since the times they served together, so I did not expect any betrayal from him. At the same time, I agreed with Norma that, to keep her shape, we would adopt a girl from an orphanage. Thanks to the money and connections, I quickly finalized the adoption of my daughter, Vittoria, who was 6 years old at the time. Eduardo, after becoming familiar with the business of my company, quickly gained my trust and began to appear frequently at my house. At some point, I trusted Eduardo so much that I accepted his proposal to protect me and share the business, after which I signed some documents. Additionally, Norma, my official wife, insisted on the agreement, as she was secretly getting involved with my assistant. That same night, hired men dragged me out of bed, beat me, and I ended up in the ICU. While I was in the hospital, they took everything I owned. The only thing that escaped the invaders' attention was the apartment originally registered in Vittoria's name. But what is even more surprising is that Ricardo ordered me not to leave the city, to visit Eduardo regularly so that they knew I was not dead and was essentially safe. I was also forbidden to tell anyone if I wanted my daughter to remain alive. Is that all? Asked Clara, shocked. Yes, that's all, nodded Gabriel. Did you go to the police? They wouldn't handle the case, replied the man, shaking his head. But it would be easier for him to simply kill you, right? Look, said Gabriel, frowning, they really planned for me to die, but I ended up surviving. When they realized that the first plan wasn't working, they decided to threaten Vittoria's safety and said that if I tried to do anything, they would make her disappear. That's why I have to watch my ex, Norma, with Eduardo. It's probably a punishment for me. Punishment for what? I never found out. Maybe for being successful, for having the talent to build a successful business while the policeman's son did not. After the conversation in the car, there was a long silence as darkness fell outside. Here's the plan, said Clara decisively, clapping her hands on her knees. Let's go to your house, you pack up Vittoria's things, and I'll take you to my apartment for a while. As you may have guessed, I'm not a private detective, but I have contacts with some real friends of my father who are in positions of power. I think it's time to ask for help. I'm not sure it will work, said the man calmly. Gabriel, it's already decided. We live in the 21st century, not in the Middle Ages. People like Eduardo, Ricardo, and your ex-wife need to be held accountable for their actions. The next morning, the door to Eduardo's office opened with a bang, without a knock. Standing at the entrance was a transformed Clara, dressed elegantly, accompanied by several broad-shouldered men in uniform. What's going on? Who are you? Asked Eduardo, alarmed, making a sudden move towards the drawer of his desk. I advise you not to resist, said one of the men calmly, ensuring that everyone was safe, and turned to his companion. Very well, Clara. You are indeed Daniel's daughter. We have been watching this family for a long time, but we had no evidence. I'm confident that, with Gabriel's help, things will change now. Eduardo, said Clara with a smile, I'm asking you to vacate the position of manager of this company. A new person will take over soon. While the procedures were underway, Gabriel and Vittoria lived in Clara's apartment. During that time, the young man gradually showed his best qualities as a true householder and family man. Where did you learn to cook so well? Asked Clara one night, amazed. You made what seemed to be a simple scrambled egg, but it was so delicious. I grew up in an ordinary family, replied Gabriel. I've already asked you not to call me that. I treat you that way out of respect. What were you going to say about your family? I meant to say that I was raised by my mother alone. She worked 2 jobs to give me everything I needed, and she always made delicious meals with the simplest ingredients. Wow! That's really a talent. Why did you decide to get into the antiques business? I've always loved old things since I was a child. To help my mother, I started selling items I found in dumps, and later, I decided to open my first antique store. Did you do that in the 90s? Asked Clara, pushing her plate away, feeling satisfied. Around that time, replied Gabriel. My father would have respected you a lot. Listen, how about becoming my new business manager? Exclaimed Clara with a smile. No, Clara. You've already done so much for me. And you, Gabriel, have also done a lot for me. You saved me from experienced invaders. I'm glad that everything happened. Now I can trust you. So, ask for whatever you want, although I know you won't ask for anything. Actually, I have a request, said Gabriel with a hint of sadness. What is your request? The biological mother of Vittoria recently appeared and wants to meet, not just with us, but also with Child Protection Services. I need you to go with me, said Gabriel, pausing, concerned about his request. You want me to act as your wife, in fact, clarified Clara. No problem, but if I agree to do that, then you agree to my offer to become the manager. Agreed, Gabriel, visibly relieved. The meeting was scheduled for the next day, but Clara felt restless again in the middle of the night. She woke up to drink water and found Gabriel in the kitchen, also drinking. He was shirtless and without the corset. Clara noticed that his body still had the build of an athlete, despite the numerous scars on his back due to the attack. "You're fine," praised Clara. "I'm trying to gradually get back in shape, but sometimes I feel like it might not work. All the exercises I do now come with pain." "I understand, but for someone with an undiagnosed disability, you're great." Gabriel began to respond softly. "You might wake up Vittoria. Also, I need to think about what it means to be your wife so we can look like a happy and convincing family tomorrow," said Clara. In the morning, Clara and Gabriel looked like a loving couple. The Child Protection Services were very pleased with the appearance of their family. The only one who was nervous was Vanda, Vittoria's biological mother, who stayed in her apartment after the social workers had left. "I've been looking for her for 7 years," said Vanda, a young woman with blue eyes who did not seem to be in a bad situation, in a calm but severe tone. "Rich people like you know what it's like to have to leave a daughter in an orphanage?" "I would never leave my daughter in an orphanage under any circumstances," said Gabriel, clenching his fists to hide his true emotions. "Well, I had to do it. I ran away from an orphanage to follow a man I accidentally got pregnant with," said Vanda, narrowing her blue eyes. "But I still had the baby and came to the capital with her. I needed time to find a place for us to live. So, I temporarily left my daughter at the orphanage through some contacts. When I went to pick her up on my day off, they told me that some rich people in an elegant SUV had adopted her. What was I supposed to do?" "Nothing now. Let Vittoria live her new life," replied Clara. "The girl has already adjusted to us and lacks nothing." "True," agreed Vanda, looking around the hallway. "But I spent so many years buying an apartment and paying the mortgage. I always dreamed of getting my daughter back, or at least being part of her life. Her name isn't even Vittoria, if you want to know." "I don't want to interrupted Gabriel. The man didn't want Vittoria to know anything about her biological mother who had left her in the orphanage." "Calm down. We are adults and should resolve this peacefully," said Clara firmly. "I'll make coffee for everyone. Let's sit at the kitchen table and discuss everything again." The adults can really reach an agreement, especially Vanda, who turned out to be a very decent person. She was hired temporarily as a housekeeper, allowing her to discreetly participate in raising her daughter. They decided that when Vittoria was old enough, she would decide for herself what to do with the information about her biological mother. Soon, Clara discovered that she was pregnant. At that time, Gabriel had recovered enough to get fully involved in the business, and Vanda was managing the house well, forming a genuine bond with her daughter's adoptive parents, especially with Clara, whom she understood almost without words. The delivery was quite difficult, requiring a cesarean section, but a beautiful girl was born, and the experienced Vanda took care of the newborn. Remarkably, the baby had the same birthmark on the clavicle that had always been present in Daniel's family. "That's surprising," said Vanda as she wrapped the baby, looking closely at the child. "It has an identical birthmark." "Really?" replied Clara, struggling to get up from the bed. "Show me." Indeed, Vanda had the same birthmark as Clara. "That's unbelievable," said the young woman, shocked. A genetic test revealed a direct relationship between Clara and Vanda. It seemed that when Clara's mother died in the hospital, she managed to give birth to a second child, despite the lack of power and darkness in the delivery room. But due to the chaos, the baby, who never cried at birth, was mistakenly considered dead. When Vanda revived, they decided to keep the matter quiet and place the child in an orphanage. Apparently, the hospital staff thought it would be better and simpler than disturbing the young father, who had recently buried his wife and was left with a small daughter. And so, the story of the main characters included the intriguing life in the sense that what seems impossible at first often becomes possible when all the circumstances are understood. Thank you for watching. Please comment, like the video, and subscribe to our channel. See other special videos I've prepared for you. See you next time.